Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 5 series of top level StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a very exciting match. It's time for the #1 Zerg in the world to take on the #1 Protoss. Spotting right here in the top left hand corner, playing with the red Zerg drones, we have none other than Serral. His opponent down in the bottom right, playing with the blue Protoss pieces, he goes by the name of MaxPax. I've been excited for this series ever since it was played about a week and maybe a week and a half or so ago at this point in time. This is the Big Brain Bout. I've been trying to get my hands on these games ever since the matches were played. Massive shout out to the Abyssal guys. Shout out to Roddy for sending over these games. I know that they generally do want to share them, but obviously they want to be able to publish it to their own channels first. I had to be patient for this one, but I heard that this particular series is an absolute banger. I've been incredibly impressed by MaxPax as of late. I've been, well, impressed by Serral since about 2018. MaxPax is still on the up and up, still continuously improving. Serral has, well, he's been the GOAT of StarCraft 2 in my mind at the very least since literally 2018, the greatest StarCraft 2 player of all time. But he has been struggling a little bit more, specifically in this matchup since the new multiplayer balance patch, and also since returning from his mandatory military service. So, we have Finland going up against Denmark. I can imagine historically, I don't really know the history of it. There's gotta be some dispute over there too. But in StarCraft, this should be an absolute banger. Now, both of these players, they do play very normal strategies. Generally speaking, they don't really mix it up all too often. Serral will occasionally mix in some cheese. MaxPax will occasionally mix it all in. But generally speaking, these guys are very, very macro-focused. For now, we find ourselves on Abyssal Reef. This map is absolutely massive. This is a map that Zerg players have not really been enjoying too much, it seems. But Serral has he hasn't been vetoing it as frequently. It's interesting. The top level players generally do have different vetoes. So a lot of the times you will see, well, the players choose maps that they're not particularly great on, or maps that they just don't have a lot of experience on. But if you are at this level of StarCraft, you have to play every single map thoroughly. And sometimes you come up with strategies that just simply work. So even though certain matchups, certain late games or whatever do not necessarily favor one race or the other, there is a lot of personal preference, especially at the absolute highest level. And obviously, well, even if you look at the stats right now, we can have a little peek. Abyssal, Reef, Liquipedia. What is the current win-loss ratio for this particular matchup? It is actually slightly Zerg favored now. Curious. Last time I checked the stats, it was actually slightly Protoss favored, but now apparently Zerg has a 52% win rate at the tournament level on this particular map. Okay. Obviously, though, with the new multiplayer, well, map pool and all that, right? Like a new season relatively recently starting. We don't really have that large of a sample size yet. A lot of the times those crazy percentages, they will usually stabilize over time. As we're starting up with a Void Ray first. MaxPax going straight into the Void Ray. He's gonna hide it? No. He's gonna try and gun down that Overlord as quickly as possible. Oracle on the back of this. This should still be a relatively quick third Nexus, but the Overlord is not going to scout much more, other than its death. There should be a probe moving on over in this direction. Probius! Alright. 350 is the normal time. Obviously, the cost of the Void Ray needs to be taken into consideration, so this is going to indeed hit a couple seconds later, but still a smooth early game right here for MaxPax, who is very likely going to be able to get away with this. There's not really a whole lot of aggression that Serral can really do. Serral just making a few additional Zerglings here. This is most of the time just in case there's like a group of adepts suddenly moving in when the queens are occupied, trying to deal with any of these. Serral trying to go for some reason, an evolution chamber. I think he could have fit a spore crawler there. Anyways, the Void Ray getting a single Overlord and then a single drone is actually quite good. This is usually the type of map where you can get away with a really quick fourth. I like this actually for Serral. If you ran that Ling in that direction, the stasis would obviously still last, and you would still not be able to take that fourth base particularly easily. Queens are trying to protect against this Oracle. Just a handful of drones, a second Stargate, and then additional Void Ray production. I'm not entirely sure what this build order from MaxPax is. Oh, okay. So remember a couple months ago when the multiplayer balance patch was first released. We used to see Void Ray straight into a second Stargate, straight into a Fleet Beacon, straight into Tempest. This was basically a build, that was designed, as we do have a council over here on the 4th base, that was designed to effectively kill the 4th base of the Zerg player, and there wasn't really a whole lot that Zerg could do about it. This is a different variant, I guess. We have a very quick +1 air weapons, we have a very quick double Stargate here, but no Fleet Beacon yet, no Tempest transition, and obviously no Mothership or anything like that either. This is a new build from MaxPax. A mass Void Ray build? Into a Twilight Council, so I'm assuming we're gonna go charge on the back of this, but it could certainly be something else. One of the really nice things about going for a Void Ray first, even though I think across the board this is a bit of a weaker play at the absolute highest level, but one really nice advantage is that you can deny all scouting. Overlords should not be able to fly in, and look at this, Serral's star senses are tingling. He has recognized that something is a little off, and he decides to go into a Spire. I think he's reading this as that Tempest build that I was talking about earlier. The Void Rays have now revealed themselves. Against Void Rays, you can definitely go Hydras. Against Tempest and Carriers, not the best choice. Obviously, Void Rays deal bonus damage against armored units, and Corruptors are armored. So, it's more or less just a numbers game. I don't believe that this 4th is going to fall, though. No, Serral is going to be able to keep that one around. In the meantime, a couple of Adepts have shaded into the natural expansion. Drones are going to run away. Zerglings will swoop in, and this should all get cleaned up eventually. Maybe some more aggression over here. Very interesting follow-up right here, though, from MaxPax. So, after going 4 Void Rays with double Stargate, he's now transitioned towards mass gateways and then into +1 together with charge. We have a 4th Nexus now starting up as well. I don't know if this was the original plan or if MaxPax decided to deviate. But if you are Serral right now, right? So maybe the strategy from the Protoss' point of view is a little bit wonky. I would imagine you could do this all off of 1 Stargate. But if you're Serral, you have seen very quick double Void Ray. You know that there's a second Stargate out there because of it. You know that on this map, well, very quick Skytoss is super popular. So the last thing you expect is an Archon Zealot all-in, right? Archon Zealot with High Templar and Storm. Like, that's weird. Serral decides to go Mutas. Okay, so he kept that Spire around. It was originally meant to be producing Corruptors against a Tempest build. Turns out it's not a Tempest build, so we decide to go into a Muta transition. Now, on the other side of the map, MaxPax has figured out what the Zerg player is going for, and we're gonna go into double Phoenix production instead. This is some advanced level rock, paper, scissors going on here. Both of them are throwing 2 rocks and 2 scissors at the same time, and they're trying to predict what the other is going for. It's played in the dark. They're also doing it in real time. They're not doing the rock. They're just throwing it. They're not even saying the little... Okay. Anyways, it's weird. I think MaxPax's original strategy was to go into Skytles. Then he decided, no, I'm going to go into charge slots instead because Serral seems to have my number. And now we're going back into effectively a ground-based army with Mutas. Trying to counter everything. The Phoenixes, though, are going to be super nice. Serral knows that those Mutas are on a timer, so he's playing them much more aggressively than he ordinarily would. The thing about Phoenixes is that they can move and shoot at the same time, and they're really quick, so once you get an engagement, it's really difficult for the Mutas to disengage. Although Serral has seemingly found a bit of an angle. He's also pushing at the front right now. Overlords are moving in. My god, these guys are playing fast. 500 APM actually here for Serral. Apparently, we're not really lacking in that department, but there are some Zealots now going in. A couple of Zealots also on their way towards the natural expansion. Serral actually panicking for... What's up, Shark Bro? Serral panicking for just a little bit, as he is trying to run in over here at the 4th base of the Protoss player. So, we have the... Oh, the Stasis Ward here triggering all of this. We have those Overlords being brought in to allow the Queens to transfuse and to engage in this fight as well. This is a lovely stasis, though, that is going to make all of this significantly easier. Zealots, in the meantime, have, for the most part, been cleaned up. Oh, these guys are so evenly matched. Now Tempests are coming. Now the Tempests are on their way. Okay. Can Serral actually get some real damage done, though? Like, yeah, he's sniping some important things. But economically speaking, Protoss is fine. If he can kill the 4th base, I think that would be enough. This is an awkward position here as well for MaxPax, who's trying to, like, go past his own Sim City. In the meantime, there's a very large Zealot counterattack towards the 3rd base of Serral, who does now finish up the 4th base here of Max. Okay, these drones, though, yeah. Them getting cleaned up could be huge. Serral pulls them away in the direction of the roaches. Although a few of the Zealots are still going to town in the mineral line. Good number of drones going down. Both players actually pretty much even in the worker department. Serral now remaking those workers. He did also make a hatchery on the low ground. And as the dust settles right now, I'm liking this position for Serral more and more. I liked it until he threw down an Ultra Cavern. That's a mistake every single time. Okay, maybe not every single time, but it does seem to be a mistake almost every time. It's so garbage, man. Every time I see an Ultra hit the battlefield, it just sort of dies. It's very expensive to make this transition. Serral only has +0 right now on his ground units. So, no armor, which is really where the Ultra shine. Obviously, the idea right here is that he's cleaned up most of the Immortals. MaxPax is not likely to make a ton of Immortals from here, although he will still add on a couple. I mean, he's seeing Roaches and Ravagers. It makes sense. I think Ultras can work out really well when the opponent has no Immortals at all, or they're like too Skytals focused in a very strange way. Ultras are pretty good against pure Skytals, but against the Immortal Archon-based unit comps, even like Zealots-based unit compositions, Ultras do seem to be a shaky choice, and I think Serral has already made the decision here to not really go and make that move just yet. Maybe this is like a, well, he is going to queue up the upgrades. Maybe this is a just-in-case type of measure. Double upgrading here as well for ground units, though. +1 air weapons coming up as well for the Corruptor. Obviously, I don't want to doubt Serral. Ridiculously good. And when you think about it, MaxPax has officially been contained on 3 bases. I don't know how he just did it, because there were so many fights going on around the map. Lots of aggression, lots of movement. The fights weren't even necessarily very Zerg favored, I don't think. MaxPax obviously with that Zealot run by also got a good bit of damage done on the other side of the map. But ultimately, as the dust settles, we have 3 base versus 5. We have 91 drones versus 63. Mothership just about to pop. New hatchery, a 6th base coming up right here as well for Serral. 4th base is being remade right now for MaxPax, but he is clearly not finding an easy time here to move in. Serral once more. Okay, these roaches are not really in the perfect spot. Man, that Overlord push in this direction was glorious, though. Just allowing the queens to spread a little bit of creep in this region is just phenomenal. Corruptor count is also reasonably big. Now that he sees the mothership, I wonder if he's just going to add on even more. Still, though, don't count MaxPax out. MaxPax, in my mind, is the best defensive Protoss player. Yes, he's been struggling a little bit here, but ultimately, he still has 66 workers. That's fine. He still is making that late game transition. That's why Serral's being so aggressive. Serral's been losing quite a few of his games in the late game. So he is desperately trying to prevent the game from going the distance. And MaxPax is, well, trying to do the exact opposite. He's trying to get this game to go as long as possible. +2 air coming up. That's a big one. Especially with carrier-based armies. That's the upgrade that really matters. Serral overextending a little bit right here with the units. Going into a greater spire as well. We have Neural Parasite coming up for Infestors. Zergling run by towards the right side. It will indeed see whether or not there is a Nexus building on that area too. Double expand here for Max. Well, he just secured this base again, but he is going to go for a very fast 5th on the back of all of this. And slowly but surely, he is creeping to a maxed out state. He's not waiting for it though. I don't know if you can really move in. I mean, this is before the Spore Crawler Forest is really underway. We're, well, at only, quote-unquote only, 12 Spore Crawlers right now. I wonder if Serral, if he gets all the freedom in the world, if he will go and add on even more. Back in the day, we used to see like 50 to like even 100 Spore Crawlers. I don't know if that's the plan here, but Serral moves in aggressively up the ramp, trying to come in from as many angles as possible. Parasitic bombs dealing so much damage. No reaction here from MaxPax. Smartly throwing it onto the mothership, because obviously it's a large unit. More area of effect on that parabomb. MaxPax, though, didn't really lose that many of his important units. No more Phoenixes to be seen. But that's okay. You don't really want Phoenixes anyways. With all of those Archons in the front, they deal so much splash damage too to any of the Zerg units that run up here. So generally in StarCraft 2, the Concave beats the Convex. But this is one of those few scenarios where you actually are better off clumping your units together, because there's so much splash damage potential in this army of the Protoss player. Still though, Serral is holding position for now. Max is hoping to see if he can break that spot. Zergling run by. Oh, this is a big one. Keep in mind that MaxPax is nearly maxed out, so if he is fully maxed out, he can't actually warp in reinforcing zealots. And that little Zergling group over here just forced a recall on that army. And once more, the very best defense is the offense. I'm getting nerd chills. This is already a promising series. It's a best of 5, by the way. Did I ever mention that? This is a best of 5. It is very clear to me that neither of these two is gonna go down without a fight. And this is that scary part of the matchup. Like, yeah, MaxPax has dealt with some problems here, but the trades have not been awful. Yeah, he lost the Nexus. Yeah, he got denied his base a few times over too. But ultimately, he arrived where he wanted to. He's got 5 bases now. Serral has more. But late game PvZ has looked pretty solid for Protoss over the last couple of months. This, though, is the perfect position for Serral. Right? Like, if Serral loses this game, I feel like that would be a very tough loss for him. Because this game has been... I don't want to say it's been handed to him, but he's been in the driver's seat ever since he did that attack towards the opponent's 4th base. He's been able to do whatever he likes, and he's getting everything. Like, he's going Lurkers, he's going Ultras, he's got a Greater Spire, he's going Infestors, he's going air upgrades, he's going ground upgrades, he's going for anything he can afford. Serral's shopping right now. Remember that Michael Jackson shopping video once upon a time? Where he walks in a mall and he just points at things that he wants to have? That's basically what Serral's doing right now. This is a billionaire going to town, and he's buying the whole store. Hee hee. Okay, no, I don't think Serral does that. I don't know, I've never heard Serral sing. Anyways. Ooh, Serral karaoke would be fire, though. I would love that. Okay, the Corruptors have dodged a lot of the storms. There's still Archons underneath, but not that many. Archons actually kind of awkwardly in the back. Fungal Growth is going to catch up as well with most of the High Templar. MaxPax turns around and decides to fight. It's also because this Protoss army has been split up. Brute Lords chasing the other chunk of it away. Dude, these guys are so quick. Sure, we're going more than 500 average actions per minute. That is close to 10 buttons a second. You know how fast you have to play? Ay. Like, Mozart's micro was pretty good. But Serral's keyboard play is in an entirely different rhythm. Funnily enough, at this point in the game, it does sort of become a rhythm game. StarCraft 2 is very rhythm-based. A lot of it is prioritization. A lot of actions aren't even necessarily cost-efficient. They're APM efficient. So, MaxPax's Zealot run-bys may not always get that much value. But it's one of those things where it takes him a couple actions to warp in a round of Zealots and to just shift queue them around the map. But it takes Serral a whole lot more to clean it up. So there are certain moments in the late game where it is actually efficient to be inefficient. At least as far as resources go. It is very APM efficient to go for moves that don't take you that much, but that would be quite annoying for the opponent to clean up. Serral's going mass static defense. He's adding on more Spore Crawlers. We have lines of spines all around as well. Curious. Whoa. Actually, let me back up here for a second. I think Mama just died. I know. Rest in pieces. No worries. We'll get another one before too long. Yep. Great splits, man. Serral's actually been really good at splitting his Corruptors in this game. There's a lot of splash damage here, right? From the High Templar, from the Archons. If you accidentally fly a clumped up group of Corruptors over a bunch of Archons, they will disappear very quickly. Corruptors have a tendency to stack together like this, but you can pre-split them, and then if you come in from every angle, the opponent can't possibly clear it. Here we go again. Looks like the Queens are once more making a bit of a march in this direction. This time around in a much more complex unit setup. Dude, how many hotkeys do these guys use? There's just so much movement all over. How do you even hotkey all of this? Corruptor's trying to come in from another side here. Protoss has been pushed towards the right side of this base. And I'm starting to once more fear for this fourth base of Protoss. In the meantime, we have a bunch of lurkers. Lurkers underground, already set up in position. Tempest obviously can fly over the terrain, and yeah, they do actually find a pretty decent angle. Serral decides to disengage. Shall we do a little bit of first-person view? How about this? This is Serral's point of view as he's playing this game. I don't know if it's going to be a little bit nauseating to look at. Actually, this is not too bad. You can't see that much. Yeah, the hotkey setup here must actually be quite complex. It used to be common, so this is actually a fun little thing in high-level StarCraft. When you first start playing, let me take control of the camera again, because this is going to be a little bit confusing, as we do have a fight over here on the right. We do have a push over here on the left as well. Prism has moved into the main base, but Serral's all over that too. When you first start hotkeying units in StarCraft 2, you're naturally inclined to put all of your roaches and your Zerglings onto one control group, right? And then when you get another control group, say your Protoss, your second control group is going to be High Templar. It's quite common at the highest level for players to have multiple control groups of combinations of units. So you have one control group for your left side army, one control group for your right side army. The hotkeying becomes... Oh, Neural? Oh, he's got an observer here. That could have been the end of MaxPax. That was dangerously close. Those infestors had one mission, and they're not over just yet. Fungal is gonna slow down the retreat. Corruptors are once more gonna go in, but... Looks like MaxPax had his get out of jail for free card as he decides to teleport his army towards the left side. Safety over here with the stepmother ship. Still though, those lurkers, man, it's not that many of them. But the combinations of lurkers, spore crawlers, spine crawlers, it's really difficult for Protoss to actually commit to push through. I think Max... What's up? What's up, Shark Bro? I think Max could have pushed a little bit deeper, but he decided to back off. Zealot run by over here, though, actually doing a lot. Serral is distracted. Serral is distracted. Takes a big volley right over there onto the broods. And these units, while the drones burrow underground, have now cleaned up most of all the static defense. That has been an excellent exchange right there for MaxPax. I love the teleportation towards the mothership. Lurkers are going to replace spine crawlers, I believe. When you think about it, they are better. They just take supply. Air upgrades coming up here for Max. We're going into the shields as well. Serral still needs a couple of upgrades for the flyers, but he will be fully maxed, as you can see over here on the right side of the scoreboard. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at though earlier, hotkeying has become very complex. I know players have asked Serral in an interview, like, hey, how do you hotkey your units? And Serral basically answered, like, I just put them on a hotkey, and then I don't have a standard go-to. Sometimes the roaches are hotkey 2, sometimes they're hotkey 4, it doesn't matter. I just hotkey them, and I just choose one that's free, and then I play with that. That is the exact opposite as to what 99% of players do. Like, I cannot do that. Fungal is so dangerous. Oh my lord. Okay, MaxPax once more gets caught pretty deep off creep. He decides to recall. I think that's really the only course of action. And he once more goes to Mama. Mama! Dude, I love the roll of the new mothership, man. Puts a smile on my face. I know some players hate recall, because it does kind of feel like a get out of jail for free card sometimes, but the constant movement around the map is wonderful. MaxPax kills a base. Recall for the Nexus is obviously on a different cooldown than the recall towards the mothership. I think you need to chill for a little bit. Ooh, Brenda and Karen die together. Yeah. I mean, this is great StarCraft, though. Like, imagine playing against one of these two. I've played a lot of StarCraft over the years. I would lose by about minute 5 if they tried. Going toe-to-toe and actually having a very even match to boot, 25 minutes in, incredibly impressive. MaxPax has secured a lot of bases. He needs to, though, because he's actually running relatively low on money. Serral still has a good chunk of minerals and gas in the bank. And he's maneuvering around the map like he's never gonna run out. He actually needs to be quite careful because his army is super expensive. Look at that. Army value in the top left. He's only got 47 workers. 9,600 minerals, 7,600 gas is a stupid amount. So he doesn't really have an easy replenishment here. If he loses this army, that's it. Needs to get at least a reasonable trade. This Nexus has been a thorn in MaxPax's side. He has been able to mine it for quite a long time, but I think this will be the last time. Because these mineral fields are not really worth it anymore. Broodlord's moving down south. A new Greater Spire coming up right now. Maybe the Zealot run by cleared up the first one? Must be. No, actually, not the case. Oh, it's bleeding out. The first one is bleeding out because it's off creep. Fair enough. Infestors! Serral forgets about the Infestors, and that is a major win right here for MaxPax. Fungal Growth will be used, but I think he lost like 6 or 7 Infestors there in total. In the meantime, that base in the far bottom left has been secured. I think it's time to send those probes on over in that direction. Large Zergling run by, though. These are obviously fully upgraded, and they hit extremely hard. Already, though, we have a High Templar group waiting together with some Zealots. Great movement there as well by the packs. Corruptors, though, moving towards the right. That is where the mothership is hiding. The other part of Protoss, though, is moving towards the left. Yeah, the stereotypical F2A move, right, that we see from a lot of Protoss players, and that has kind of been a running gag in the StarCraft world for such a long time. MaxPax is the polar opposite, man. This is an incredibly complex set of units to control properly. And also to position properly. I feel like that is often not appreciated by Zerg players. Zerg units are so freaking fast, you don't have to think about positioning that much. As Protoss, you need to preemptively have your units in the right position in order to actually move around. It's really quite difficult to decide where you want to be parking your army. Now, I wonder if this one has been parked correctly. Max, it might be better off to either recall towards this or to recall away. The mothership is certainly going to go down. Tempest in the meantime, though, have distracted, or I guess the mothership is distracted. They've bought enough time here to get these Tempests to clean up another hatch. This hatchery was mostly irrelevant because very little mining going on there. Another mothership coming up. We have a good chunk of, okay, overseers as well. A whole load of changelings crawling around the map. The rest of the army over here in the far bottom left has now been caught as well. We do see some feedbacks. One neural parasite on a Tempest. Not necessarily the worst of traits right there for Max, but this is also not looking that great for him anymore. Slowly but surely, MaxPax is fizzling out. How does Serral even do this, man? I haven't seen any Zerg player be this confident in the late game. Is there an observer? There is no observer. Okay, he needs to be very cautious. He does have a oracle here for revelation. Correction, he had an oracle here for revelation. Is there an observer? Oh, there is an observer somewhere over here. Yeah, that's a big one, though, because if you don't see the infestors, you can just get your entire army neural parasited. And there's no better way than to counter the Protoss army than with the Protoss army. Lurkers moving up towards the high ground. Archons will get shut down together with the Zealots, and this is becoming very costly. Yeah, it bought a little bit of time. And MaxPax has been able to harvest quite a few resources once more. But I don't think that was really worthwhile. Serral's still mining too. We look at the income graph over the last 10 minutes. It's actually been super back and forth. Super cool. Very nice to see. Problem is, if you look at the bank right now and the total amount of supply, MaxPax is sitting at a good army, but not an amazing one. He's rounding out his unit composition with some better units, but not quite his preferred weapon of choice. I wouldn't mind seeing a bunch more High Templar, maybe. Got a lot of Archons, maybe a few more of those would not hurt. Serral, in the meantime, has got the perfect Zerg army. Look at that. 10,000 minerals worth of Zerg. It's only 35 drones. This Zerg army is absolutely massive. Now the Neural Parasite is coming in. Can we see a... Yes, we do see a fungal growth as well. Cloak has been activated. Time Warp has been activated too. Parasitic Bombs once more coming in clutch. Most of the Infestors have been cleaned up, but I just don't see that much Protoss remaining. The Corruptors have swooped in, and they have forced these Protoss units to deal so much friendly fire. Incredibly well done right there by the GOAT. It's Serral who obtains the victory in game number 1. Over the last couple of months, I have casted a lot of ZVP, right? A lot of Zerg versus Protoss. And I have seen Zerg lose time and time again, especially in the late game. Serral just seemed to be in control from start to finish. Just such fast strategic gameplay. The crazy thing is, right, when you look at Zerg and you compare it to 2018 Zerg. 2018 was when Serral first started dominating. It's just been nerfed repeatedly. And a lot of the reason is because of this man right over here. And every single time there's a new multiplayer balance patch, I'm like, oh god, well this has got to be it now, right? And I've been having that vibe as of late too, where Serral is just, well, not looking nearly as dominant, but it seems like he may have figured it out once more. That was ridiculous. Genuinely, such an incredible game right there by Serral. We can bring back the just play like Serral meme. That was honestly extremely hard. Yeah, just play like Serral, man. You're struggling with ZVP, just try and play a little bit more like Serral. Like, MaxPax was playing an excellent game. He had a couple of slip-ups, and I think ultimately that's what cost him. Serral did have a few slip-ups too, but he was economically ahead. Remember when he, for example, lost the Infestors? I think a lot of those slip-ups sort of balance out. But Serral ultimately was on 5 bases when MaxPax was on... Yeah, he was just on 3. So I think ultimately just it cost him a little bit too much. It was just a little bit... sick game. Sick game. Now we find ourselves on Amygdala. I am certainly not counting MaxPax out here. Also notice, by the way, Serral made an Ultralisk Cavern. He fully upgraded Ultralisks. And then he decided not to make Ultralisks. Maybe that's why he won. He was considering Ultras. He's like, should I throw the game? Should I maybe... No. We're not doing it. We are not gonna throw the game. Poor Ultra. I believe there's a place for the Ultra, but I don't think that game was it. Okay. I actually don't think MaxPax should be too upset about that match. Truth be told, when we got to the situation where MaxPax lost his 4th base the very first time, and Serral managed to mine 5 bases, so it was like, what was it, like 80-something drones, 5 base Zerg, versus 60-something probes, 3 base Protoss. If you have a perfect AI play that game out from both sides, it should be a Zerg win every single time. The fact that MaxPax still managed to hang in the game and yeah, he got it to be extremely close. Despite making a couple of critical errors. Like, the game lasted another 20 minutes from there. It really does speak volumes to the skill of MaxPax. Still a very young player. Still relatively new to this level. So, yeah, it's certainly not over yet. Yeah, it's difficult. Once you're... I feel like against Serral, you almost need to win... It's rare for Serral to lose on mechanics. Right? So mechanics as in just straight up StarCraft control, decision making, the whole shebang. A lot of players do win, but they almost win always with like a trick. Some sort of trick to throw him off of his game, or You know, to go for a strategy that's technically not that great, but they have figured out a way to counter him. That seems to be the most common way for Serral to be caught out. MaxPax went toe-to-toe right there, and he, yeah, pulled it off. Even though it's a loss, I don't think it's a bad one. This time around, we're going double Oracle first. This one got a little bit of some additional energy there from the Nexus. Drones are returning back. Okay, 2 workers just like that. Don't lose the Oracle! Oh, he loses it. That's a big one. Got a little too greedy there. 3 drones in total is not terrible, but losing an Oracle... 4 drones in total, actually. Losing an Oracle is quite significant. Those Oracles have so much value as the game goes on. Now suddenly, Serral can go for example, a Queen drop. If he really wants to, it's not really his style, but he could go for a Queen drop if he wanted to. If he starts up Overlord speed here in a moment, I wouldn't be too surprised. I think Serral's just going to use this as an opportunity, though, to just continue droning. Knock down the rocks over at the 4th. Okay. I would like to see a game where both of these are very even, going into the late game. Because I think at that point, I may even consider it to be MaxPax's favorite. Just such good play. Additional gateways coming up. Blinky boys will be the weapon of choice. So we have ourselves triple Oracle into Blink Stalker. Nice and early 3rd Nexus. We'll probably see a 4th base on the top of this as well. And yeah, all of this is very, very normal. I really liked what MaxPax was doing across the board, though, in the early game in that previous one. Yeah, he had a couple of rough moments. By the way, that was also an excellent example as to why we don't see a lot of experimentation in the early game. So Serral looked at that build. He's like, yo, this is weird. I don't really know what you're doing, but what about I hit you in the face? So that was a stock standard Zerg early game versus a bit of a weird Protoss early game. And immediately the vulnerabilities were exposed. Immediately Serral decided to attack. And it came at the cost of the 4th Nexus there for MaxPax. So we're doing something a lot more conventional. Something a lot more tried and true. I like seeing him experiment, though, because the one thing you can sometimes be a little bit critical of the top-level players is that they're a bit predictable. MaxPax has been shaking things up a little bit in his gameplay as of late, and this attack is certainly one that has potential. Serral does have +1 melee coming. It's only about halfway done at this point. Stalker should be able to dominate the battlefield for a little while, especially with this many stasis wards. This is where the 3rd Oracle is so handy. If you can still get the kill on the 4th, though, of the Zerg, that would be massive. Serral already remaking another Nexus. A Zerg Nexus at the bottom of the map. Hive coming up too. We'll see a Hydra Den, and I'm assuming a Lurker Den eventually as well. This is where you're really missing that 3rd Oracle, though. If he doesn't get the kill on the 4th base, I'm gonna write it up to him losing the Oracle. Even though it's not necessarily the case. Great movement here by Serral. +1 is not yet done. Needs to be a little careful. I think he's actually getting a little bit ahead of himself. Really fighting tooth and nail to keep this base going. And the base dies. Oh, we're gonna recall? Yep. Great attack right there. Great attack by our Danish Protoss. We don't yet have a... Yep, Lurker Den. Serral was so preoccupied, he didn't quite get it going as quickly. One of the main reasons to have a 4th base, as those drones are going down south, is because of the gas. So the gas geyser is really the most important part of the 4th base if you want to go Lurkers. Your main bottleneck is just the amount of gas income. Serral already sitting at 1,000 of it. He was prepared to make Lurkers, and then he realized, wait a second. My Hydra Den was late, therefore my Lurker Den was late. Makes the game a little awkward, and there's a certain vulnerability in the play right now. Thing is, MaxPax is assuming that Serral did not make that mistake, so he's not going to be able to punish it. But technically speaking, Zerg is quite vulnerable right now. You're supposed to have Lurkers out at this point in the game. If a big Zealot attack hits on the other side of the map, I mean, it's technically a possibility here for Max. It's just that he doesn't know. You assume perfection. Rookie mistake. Alright, Spire coming up right here. I'm assuming we will see once more mostly just Corruptors, in case it is a Skytools transition, which it may just very well be. Fleet Beacon once more coming up. Hatchery over here did get... Was that a kill? No, I think it was cancelled. Opting to go for the base that we just fought over. Second time around. Lurkers now coming up. Quite a few of them, actually. Yeah, and look at this attack. This is actually super dicey. Imagine if MaxPax was 10 seconds earlier. Like, if he was just a bit sooner, he already has Storm. I think he could win with this attack straight up. Because the Lurker then was delayed. Now that the Lurkers are out, though, it'll be much more difficult. Fleet Beacon coming up. Additional Stargates on the production tab as well. Yeah, don't like these storms. They're not terrible, but it's just risky. Oh, really? Really, Max? Oh my god, MaxPax, okay. Big Zealot run by in the meantime in the main base. Prism took care of that. I think these Archons, though, yeah, the High Templar are just a little bit too exposed. Ultimately, Lurkers pretty much always defend this sort of thing. Even if you get decent trades, it's still ultimately not a game-winning attack. If you look at the resources lost, I think that was a little too aggressive. A lot of gas lost on the side of the Protoss, very little lost on the side of the Zerg. He does kill the spawning pool. Alright, new one coming in the natural. Not the end of the world, though. There are definitely moments where if you lose the spawning pool, it's actually almost game over. But this is right at the beginning of a lull in the game, right? Serral has some time. He's got a good army. He could just make other units if he really needed to. Spawning pool kill is nice, but not really worth losing 20 Zealots over. Alright, well there she is! Mama! Ooh! Protoss has become a big fan of mamas as of late. You love to see it. +1 air weapons here coming up for Serral. We should see a similar upgrade as well for Protoss. Instead of that cybernetics core. We'll probably see it going in just a little bit. There she is! Isn't she pretty? And she's gonna be important too. There's not a lot of anti-air in this area. Also, not a lot of detection. There's 2 overseers, which is not amazing, but Mama Ship obviously can go ahead and cloak. And just using the cloak here is gonna be phenomenal. He doesn't know how many Corruptors there are, so he's being a little cautious with it. But he can just save this. Yeah. Oh. Mama! That way! Cloak it! Mama, you have one job! Ay, she didn't put on her glasses, man. She just needed to move. Yeah. Just a little. Yeah, that way. She could have cloaked it. I guess there would have been detection regardless from the Overseers, but... not quite optimal positioning. Now Serral decides to go into a couple of Overlord drops. Well, 2.5 couples of Overlord drops. 5 of them coming up. Now we have Tempest, though. And obviously those Lurkers, yeah, they're great at anti-ground, but they don't hit up. So this is once more going to force out more Corruptors and Hydras. Where's the Drop-A-Lords? Okay. Not that many units dedicated to it. Serral taking control of the bottom right-hand watchtower to make sure that he can actually get some vision in this area to know that he's not going to be spotted. He's aiming for the natural expansion. MaxPax, though, slowly chipping away at whatever he can hit. And this is looking really, really nice right here. Oh, no kill, or no cancel, rather. That was a kill on that base. This is looking really quite nice, though, for MaxPax. Yes, he's lost a bunch of bases, but he's maxed out. He's got good upgrades. This is still by no means a smooth game from here. But if you compare this to where he was in the previous game on Abyssal Reef, and considering how close he made that particular match, this position here is very similar, except it's in favor of the Protoss and not in favor of the Zerg. He still needs to play this out correctly. Yeah, these moves over here are all questionable. Lurkers, though, are gonna get cleaned up. Just very expensive. We really need to get the Tectonic Destabilizers upgrade. It allows the Tempest to deal double damage. It seems like a no-brainer when you have this much money in the bank. Also, Serral, or MaxPax rather, really needs to spend his money. Yeah. He's not quite maxed out. He's not quite MaxPax. Decides to recall towards the natural. Mama's done with her job. Getting these lurkers right now. Ooh. Serral doesn't know where the Protoss army is. He needs to run. He needs to get the hell out of here. Because losing this many lurkers, he cannot afford it. Okay. I wonder if maybe MaxPax should have recalled to the natural. That's what I thought he was doing. He decided to recall to the third. If he would have maybe been able to go to the third base and then carve a path straight south, he could have maybe cut off those lurkers. Serral doesn't have enough to really remake them, but they've made their way back home. The other group of lurkers in the meantime is up north. Cloak and targeting the overseers is something I would love to see. Although there's more overseers coming in. Carriers coming up. If I have to be critical, I don't really like the timing of some of the upgrades here for MaxPax. I feel like he could have had a lot more. There's not a single Skytoss upgrade at this point in the game. Specifically when you're playing carriers, you benefit from it so much. Not that Serral's upgrades are phenomenal in this game, but at least he's been upgrading. Yeah, Cybercore starts up. MaxPax is going to try and wall himself back in again, losing that tech at the front. Okay. Let's see. Constant aggression. Oh. Got ourselves another lurker snipe. Zergling run by together with a bunch of lurkers towards the top left. But there is a stalker on the watchtower spotting all of this. Serral decides to retreat. Again, an absolute nail-biter of a game. So sick. Alright, this hatchery is not going to happen. On the flip side, though, this base is now up. It's the third time, but it seems to be a lot more secure this time, right? With this amount of Protoss army parked on this side of the map, there's finally +1 flyer. +1 air weapons. This is a good chunk of Protoss, and as long as it's occupying that base, or at least the general region of that map, I think that expansion is going to stay alive. MaxPax wants more, though. Got so many Tempests, he can one-shot whatever. Do we have any Vipers in the mix? Just the one. No Infestors or anything along those lines. Okay. Big storms over here. Lurkers are in a bit of an awkward position, though. Decides to recall these rather expensive Protoss troops, sends them to the natural. Make sure that those Protoss units could get cleaned up, or those Zerg units rather, could get cleaned up as well if they decide to march on. Serral instead decides to move them closer to home again. And MaxPax is seemingly tightening the noose in a very strategic way. It's a super complex noose. But Serral's got like a hand trying to move away from the position, but that's not going to happen. No. Slowly but surely. He sees the base now. Should be an easy kill. Slowly but surely, MaxPax is moving in. Serral's going in for what seems to be an effort here to break out of this soft contain. Some good feedbacks. Oh, he feedbacked that Viper. That means that we do not have a parasitic bomb in this area. Looks like the flying units will still mostly get destroyed regardless. But the ground army of Zerg has also been killed. Feedbacking the Viper there was absolutely massive. That Lowko maneuver was not quite what we like to see, man. We need to get a parabomb in there too. That one High Templar that died immediately after. Songs need to be sung of that legend. In the meantime, by the way, the Protoss ground forces did kill the base in the far bottom right. Corruptors going around the map. But this is that awkward group of Corruptors where they don't really have anything to do. Lucky for the Zerg player here, lucky for Serral. MaxPax is getting him a target to hit. We have a bunch of Tempest. I feel like we shouldn't be making Tempest at this point, but apparently MaxPax doesn't really care. Lurkers have found another way for them to be useful, despite the fact that there's a lot of anti-ground here. Need to be careful, though. One lurker has been left behind. Corruptors really want to go in for a caustic spray. But MaxPax is moving his stalkers around in such a way that it's prevented. Even though he doesn't know exactly where those units are, he knows that they're likely going to be attempting a move exactly like that. And Serral decides to retreat. Another mama ship is coming up. Interesting movement, by the way, here from MaxPax. So after trading out armies, he was very close to choking his opponent out. He decided to back off. So it's a little risky, yes, but I think he's got a good read on this match. Obviously, he doesn't know how much money there exactly is for Serral, but I think he's looking at this. He's like, well, I think I've been efficient enough. I've been mining enough. I know my opponent can't have that many resources. I think me sitting back right now and actually giving my opponent a little bit of room to breathe is the right play. This is a super high level move though for MaxPax, because you need to have a deep understanding of not just your own position in the game, but also what your opponent's position is. And I think this is the right move. But we can see the whole map, you know? Like, we can see everything. I think MaxPax can make a much more sophisticated army, whereas Serral is kind of awkwardly sitting with a bunch of corruptors up in the air that don't really do anything. You're gonna need to keep them around. There is enough Stargate or enough Stargate troops here to really, for them to once more be effective, but this is not really that great of a Zerg army here compared to that of the Protoss. Still though, it's also giving Serral a lot of wiggle room. So Serral can once more max out. And he's getting really close. He's getting cut off over here. He's getting cut off over there as well. Don't accidentally... Oh, he did it again. We saw this recently in a series against Estrella. Serral decides to tap out. He doesn't like this position. He doesn't know what he needs to do at this point. So rather than playing it out and suffering for the next 5 minutes, he just decides to leave. As a StarCraft caster, as a StarCraft fan, it's really easy for me to be critical of Serral's decision there, because I do think he left too early. I don't think you really quite need to leave there. But obviously, he knows the situation much better than I do, right? Like, he understands where he needs to take this series, and clearly he was not feeling that that game was going anywhere. It's one of those things where, yeah, you've got a good army and you've got like a decent economy, but it's like 60% of what your opponent's army and your opponent's economy is. So you can play it out a little bit longer and lose 99 out of 100 instances, right? You could play it out for another 10 minutes and waste a little bit of mental stamina. But you gotta sometimes think of the series as well. And even though that's a bit of a frustrating tap out for the fans, I do think it makes sense from his perspective. But I never really like it whenever pro gamers step out like that, though, when they have, you know, a seemingly decent economy and like 170 supply. He did this as well in another series I recently casted, where he similarly had a decent army and he had a decent economy, but he just didn't know a solution, right? Like, most of the pro gamers will think of StarCraft games in terms of win conditions. So the idea is always, how do I win now? From this position, how do I win now? What do I do here? What do I win? How do I... Like, that's the only thing they're really concerned with. And if you're drawing a blank and you have absolutely no win condition anymore, there's not really any good reason to stay in the game. So, yeah. I think that's one of those late game scenarios where Zerg players are just feeling a little bit uncertain as to what they need to do. There's not really an easy comeback mechanic when you're playing against the #1 Protoss on the planet. I'm actually pretty sure it feels similar. I've never played against MaxPax or Serral, but I know that playing against Serral has been described as playing against an iron wall. It's an immovable object, not really much you can do. I think MaxPax is giving off very similar vibes in those situations. He doesn't really make any mistakes. And while technically you could maybe hope he makes a mistake, if he doesn't, and you test for those for 5 minutes long, and you just, yeah, he doesn't seem to make any mistakes, it is very difficult to achieve anything. And maybe it's also a soft protest. I know there's a lot of Zerg players right now that are unhappy about the late game. Not just against Protoss, but also against Terran. Not so much an issue in ZVZ, but across the board, Zerg players seem to be quite frustrated. I don't think Serral has been very vocal about his opinion. But if I want to read into the early GG very deep, maybe we could see that as a soft protest. Maybe not, I don't know. Alright, it's gonna be a Void Ray first again here for Max. Who played an excellent game, by the way. Yeah, all the talk there about Serral, because he left. Maybe a little bit earlier than what we normally expect. But MaxPax played as close to a perfect game as we see Protoss players play. He really is the real deal. It's so nice to have a Protoss player perform at the absolute highest level. Like, yeah, we have Hero, and Hero is obviously in a class of his own. But it's a very different playstyle. Hero and MaxPax are both similarly extremely good. Some people will consider Hero to be the #1 player. I consider MaxPax to be the #1 Protoss. I'm just more impressed by the way that MaxPax approaches the game. I feel like MaxPax has some weaknesses in his play that Hero doesn't really have. For example, when MaxPax gets thrown off of his game in the earlier stages of it, say right now, Serral swoops in with an odd amount of Zerglings, kills the Adepts, slows down the Nexus, whatever, right? When MaxPax gets thrown off of his game plan, he doesn't perform nearly as well. I feel like that's where Hero and most of the Korean players in general are super strong. They just adjust and come up with a new win condition pretty much immediately. Especially against players like, for example, Dark. MaxPax is not necessarily favored. Dark is a very chaotic player. He throws curveball after curveball. Very difficult for him to respond correctly in those set of situations. And yeah, I almost wonder if Serral was a better opponent for him, win-loss ratio-wise, than a Dark would be, or even a Rogue would be. Not exactly sure, but at least the general game sense is a little different. So that is something at least that MaxPax can still be working on. But again, most of the guys that I cast regularly, most of the guys in the top 10 of StarCraft, they're all playing for a decade plus. MaxPax was like 9 years old a decade ago, you know? Like, he's still a relatively young player when it comes to top-level StarCraft, so I don't think we've seen his peak performance just yet. Blink coming up together with +1 again. Just like what he did in game number 2, but also a little asterisk next to it. Because, again, this is what MaxPax does in every single game. Small deviations, small switch-ups. This is almost a combination between the build that he played in game number 1 and then also the build that he played in game number 2. There's a little bit of both in this particular match. If you look at just the big scope, the games look pretty much identical strategically from Protoss. But they're really not. Serral is doing very similar things. Although he didn't go for the +1 melee this time around, he decided to delay the Evo Chamber upgrade. Small deviations that do lead towards pretty large results, because you can never really take what MaxPax is doing for a given. He's not doing that thing that he was doing like half a year ago, where he was just doing the same build repeatedly, over and over and over again. It's small deviations, but Serral needs to respect it. He doesn't know if this could be a Glaive to Depth follow-up or Archon drops or whatever. Turns out it's the stock standard this time around, but it's the stock standard after a Void Ray weird opener, right? Like if you go for a weird Void Ray beginning, you kind of expect that this is going to be some sort of strange follow-up too. We decide to just go for the most normal follow-up now. Zerglings at the bottom of the map. Trying to see if they could potentially intercept a 4th Nexus. Same for this Ling over here on the left. Scouting for the exact same thing. I think we're gonna keep our camera over here though. It's only a single Oracle this time around. In the previous game we had 2 Oracles. Well, technically 3. But one of them died. And he managed to get the kill on the opponent's 4th Nexus. 4th Hatchery, rather. Today, apparently, Nexi are hatcheries and hatcheries are Nexi. Serral decides to go for a full counterattack. This is effectively just a +1 roach speed timing attack here for Serral. Literally the timing attack that you learn in your very first game. I don't really like this all too much if I'm being completely frank. Mostly because you need some sort of anti-air. There's still that Void Ray from the early game. And if you're gonna go for a roach shove, you need something to kill the Oracle and the Void Ray. Void Ray is actually very useful in these type of scenarios. It can very easily target fire down a lot of Ravagers. Serral not really going for the all-in variant of this build. Not the one that most players will go for. Instead, he decides to transition towards a Hive Tech once more, and now he's using the 4th base to his advantage. But he now has a super large amount of Roaches and Ravagers, and they generally don't do much from this point in the game. Like, they can be very useful, but you need to get some sort of value. Maybe killing your opponent's 4th Nexus is good value, though. I would say that's effective. 4th Nexus, indeed, does get cancelled. Lurker down on the back of this. And I think the age of the Roach is over. Ranged coming up here for the Hydralisk. Lurker Den, indeed, is going to be there too. So we're going to go Ling Hydra Lurker once more. Prism just being a little bit annoying. Showing it inside of the main base. Flying it back home. Zealot run-bys need to be respected. Nexus coming up, 2nd time in a row. This is important though for Protoss. You really don't want to lose this Nexus repeatedly. That's where Protoss usually finds themselves in a really vulnerable spot, when they can't get their 4th base secured. Notice, by the way, compared to a month ago, MaxPax is not doing that super quick transition towards a fleet beacon. This is the point in the game wherein, well, the first iteration, I guess, of Protoss strategies in the new multiplayer balance patches, we do have a pretty quick fleet beacon. Not quite at the same time. Protoss players have started delaying it just a tad. And he's also being very aggressive. This is not really MaxPax ready for a fight. I don't believe he actually wants to fight. But this is the way that he can defend his 4th base in a very strange way. I know it's on the exact opposite end of the map. I don't think you want to push too deep here, man. No. He just took a bit of a bruising here on some of his shields, but didn't really lose anything critical. Serral has Lurkers out now. Yeah. Zergling run-by attempted towards the bottom, accompanied by a bunch of Roaches, but the Nexus now is up. Very cool. Alright, Serral decides to go into a Nidus network. Mothership here coming up for MaxPax once again. If we can get the Nidus Worm inside of the main base, that is an easy way to get a victory for Zerg. Suddenly having all of this, well, be gone is painful. I think he must have seen an Overseer moving over in this direction. Already there's a single Stalker waiting. One Stalker is not that much, but it's better than having absolutely nothing. Nidus network, it's done. This Overseer is certainly the one that's up to no good. Does MaxPax notice? I've seen MaxPax actually miss Nidus Worms on the minimap, where he's so busy being the aggressive Protoss player that he doesn't quite see whether or not there's a worm inside of his base. Okay, he already has a Zealot patrolling it. I think he sniffed out that something is not quite right. So this is MaxPax's first point of view. Nidus Worm goes up in the main base right now. It's currently going up. He's busy microing right over here, though. Keep in mind that we see that very deliberate notification on the minimap. That is not what MaxPax sees. MaxPax does not see a single little red marker over there, right? It's just a tiny little square. That's all he notices. Let me take control of the camera again. He cleaned it up. He cleaned it up with ease. Nidus Worm coming up at the bottom of the map right now. MaxPax scouting for it. And he sees it, actually, with a Stalker on the watchtower. A couple water balloons being thrown over here on the... That's ambitious. That's not going to happen here either. Serral decides to just move his units through the center of the map instead. But MaxPax cutting off this path as well. Or this path, rather, as well. Yeah, I mean, MaxPax is... he's everywhere. He's crossing his T's, he's dotting his I's. He's maxing his packs. What do you do? What do you do now? Serral can make whatever he likes, but what do you make? Where do you take this game from here? Well, I think his best plan of attack is either Protoss steps on creep, or you try to deny a 5th base. MaxPax still only on 4 expansions here, 4 bases in total. I don't think he can really do much about any of those. Yeah, unless you can gobble them up from the inside out. This is Nidus Worm number 5. Zealots are running on over in this direction too. Oh. Dangerous, dangerous. Okay. Lurkers have made their way towards the left side of the 3rd. Cloak can be activated easy though, yeah. Time warp to make it difficult for them to escape. This was a bit of a desperation play, and I think mostly a frustration play here from Serral. Don't really like that decision all too much. Maybe though, as a distraction, it works a little bit better. We have another army moving in towards the southern 4th. I think there's enough Protoss though to keep this around. How many storms do we still have? It looks like there's energy for 1 or 2 more. Obviously the rest of the Protoss army can move on over in this direction too. Carriers now coming up. Yeah, this is delicate. Alright. Yeah, no. Serral's gonna be forced to back off. As slowly as bank is depleting. Keep in mind that those Nidus networks are by no means free. All of these run-bys are starting to become costly. And the effectiveness here of the Protoss units is once more shining through. MaxPax getting a lot of value. Finally, a Nidus network did go up. And it is indeed on the 5th base here of the Protoss. Nidus now also going into the main base. MaxPax is maxed out. It's a little awkward for him, so he can't actually warp in enough units to prevent this one from coming up. Although it looks like it will get denied before any units decide to unload. Zealots have found the newly acquired Zerg hatchery as well in the top left-hand corner. Drones decide to return back around. Serral going straight through the center now. Loses a carrier here is MaxPax. Maybe a second carrier, not too far behind. Great catch right there by Serral, who's now setting up in this intersection. Very difficult position here to break for MaxPax. Does he have enough? Keep in mind that Serral has 82 workers versus the 60-something here for MaxPax, so his army supply is not nearly as big. It's important though for MaxPax to break this. The longer he waits, the more units he will lose in a natural expansion. Probes are already going down. We have a Nidus network on the 3rd or the... No, this is the 5th base actually, of Serral. Zealots are gonna get cleaned up in that department. Flying units have been tasked with trying to clear all of this up, but it means that it's all very slow going. Storm's going down. Oh. MaxPax not jumping at the opportunity. Serral is inviting him into the spines of the lurkers. Using the long range right now of the Tempest, but 22 probes have already gone down. Zealot run by in the meantime in the top left-hand corner. Zergling run by over here too, but the photon cannon should be able to clear all of that up. Recall towards the mothership, which is in the natural expansion, to secure this base once more. Serral decides to just retreat. In the meantime, there's a chunk of Protoss units that has been sent towards the top right, but it looks like this base will stay alive. Most of the Zealots have slipped away as well from that base all the way up north. One more left us to sacrifice. 12 drones go down. MaxPax now finding himself with a meager 40 probes. Is he gonna remake workers? He's lost 35 workers in total in this game. It does not seem to me that he's remaking them. That means that he is likely gonna go for one full bulldozer. One army to win the game with. Is this the smart play? I don't know. Yeah, there's quite a bit of Zerg, but it's very lurker heavy. Ooh, if you can get a couple lurkers for free, I don't hate it. Army value-wise, Protoss is still certainly in the running of this game. Time warp goes down. Good storms. Zergling run by in the meantime towards the bottom of the map. Forced to storm his own zealots, but all the links do go down. MaxPax actually slow maxing. I wouldn't have minded him just warping in as many units as possible, but here we go. Serral decides to move in. No Viper this time around for parasitic bombs. Corruptors are likely going to get destroyed, and that's what I was talking about. Serral taps out again. Now this one's even more extreme than the previous. Serral decides to tap out despite being ahead in supply. Actually, was he ahead in supply? Maybe at the tail end of that engagement, he was not. So he loses the Corruptors and he taps out over here. Yeah, so he's at 165 supply versus 158. Here's the problem. He's not going to lose, or he's not going to win this fight, since the Corruptors are dead. The Tempest will clean up everything else. He can't really make a good group of Corruptors here to shut any of these Tempests down. So, on the back of this hatchery would fall. His counterattack did not actually kill the base over here, because the rest of the Protoss army is all over it too. This is, again, an early tap out. But I don't disagree. GG. Absolutely brilliant play right there by MaxPax. I thought Serral had him. When the Lurkers were in the natural expansion, and Serral decided to just do a full attack straight through the center of the map. MaxPax was on the flanks, all of those pushes got deflected, and then Serral was, bam, right over there on the low ground between the natural, the third, and the fourth base of the Protoss, right? Like, that angle is incredibly hard to break for Protoss. MaxPax approached it very intelligently. He lost a lot, yes, but he didn't lose everything. And I think the positioning of the game at that point was just good enough for him. Honestly, brilliant play. Yeah, I want to talk about the early tap out, but honestly, I don't really see what Serral could have done. I don't really... There's no easy way for him to counter a ground army and an air army at the same time, right? Like, that's one of the things that Zerg kind of struggles with. Like, yeah, you have a great counter to air. Yeah, you have a great counter to ground. But you don't have anything that hits ground and air. So if you compare that to, for example, carriers or Tempest, right? Like, the Mothership even. Great anti-ground, great anti-air. Zerg is very specialized in both of those segments of the late game. Yeah, you can absolutely destroy the air. Yeah, you can absolutely destroy the ground, but if you don't have a massive economical advantage, you can't really counter both. So if he would have had a unit that he could make, that would be good in that department, right? Like, he could make Hydras, I guess, but you're not going to win against a late-game Protoss army with Hydralisks. Like, that's really the only unit that comes to mind that would even be remotely relevant there, but it just doesn't really... Yeah, there's no unit in that arsenal for Zerg. All of the tier 3 Zerg units are, like, the Lurker, the Brute Lord, the Ultralisk. They're all very anti-ground. So it's a little delicate there. Yeah, back in the day, Zerg used to have the Infested Terran. So the Infested Terran was one of the tools that Zerg had. That's the reason why it was considered to be pretty overpowered. One of the tools that Zerg had that was anti-ground and anti-air. It wasn't even amazing as far as damage output goes to... as it went, I guess, to anti-ground. But it was very good at blocking units from moving around. And it was a pretty broken mechanic in hindsight, if I'm being honest with you. But it does make the game a little bit more tricky. Technically, I guess, the idea is that you can use Microbial Shroud together with Hydralisks. That's the idea. Yeah, you can kill ground and air reasonably well with that. But it absolutely gets torn apart by Psionic Storm. Hydras are just not quite tanky enough for that sort of thing. You can't really just make Infestors and Hydras and call it an army. So, yeah, Serral in a bit of an awkward position. Decides to tap out. And that means we are going to match point here for MaxPax. Max point. Or Pax point. Anyways, a little bit of a different start here for Serral. Honestly, it's not a bad start here for Serral. But I don't love it. I feel like this is almost like a desperation play. This is something that MaxPax will have beaten time and time again. And this is now taking the winds out of the Zerg sail. Obviously, it's not a huge deal. He really only lost a small chunk of resources, but this is not the type of start that really speaks volumes of confidence in the playstyle here of the Zerg player. When you make that Ling group and you don't really get anything done with it, I mean, you kill a probe, I guess, but yeah, this is the type of start that MaxPax will be very, very comfortable with. It's going to allow him to take a third Nexus. It's going to allow him to make those Oracles. And he should be A-okay. I guess back in the day, you also had that Roach Ravager Ling Bane unit composition that Zerg players were very, very good with. Even though it's not great for anti-air, we used to see a lot of Ravager Bane armies. But since the Baneling got nerfed quite a long time ago at this point, that unit composition has really lost popularity. Not really a viable choice anymore. Serral just building whatever he can to keep his drones alive. This is because he needed to, right? He needed to, yeah, be very cautious here. Can't really afford spore crawlers, but he also can't afford losing drones. Okay. Good start right here for MaxPax. Now we are on King's Cove. This map is huge. This map is actually very good for Protoss, specifically against Zerg. +1 melee coming up here again for Serral. He hasn't gone for this every single game of the series. As a matter of fact, I think he only did it once before so far. Although he does mix this in from time to time. It's actually really nice against Stalker-based builds, which is once more what MaxPax decides to go for here. Yeah, I don't think these two games that we just saw back-to-back are really rage quits from Serral. I would, as a StarCraft fan, like to see him sit in a game for another 2 minutes. But the thing is, he's not playing for our entertainment. That's the thing, man. He's not here for our fun. He is here to win. He doesn't care about our fun. If that's a byproduct, sure. Playing games for the fans, sure. But he's not here for our entertainment. He's here to win. Doesn't care about anything else. If there's a bonus there that it is enjoyable to watch, sure. But you really do want to obtain the victory if possible. And games like this are also very intense. Like when you're playing a full best of 5 series. Like mentally it's exhausting. I think physically it's also actually very draining. I know they've done a lot of research. I've brought this up before, but there's been research done on how much chess players burn throughout a tournament day. So if you're a chess player at a tournament, like you're just moving pieces on a board, right? Like how much they burn a stupid amount of calories. StarCraft is obviously not quite as deep as chess, but it does have a very physical aspect to it too. Like when you're playing super fast, it is not, you know, it is not the most physically exhausting thing you can do. But it's certainly a little bit more physical than chess. I think you actually burn more calories playing a StarCraft tournament day than you'd imagine. I would really love to see that research done. 4th Nexus coming up right now for MaxPax, who's doing some nice dancing on the other side of the map. Zergling run by, heading on over. Serral trying to see if he can get the counter on that base. That would be amazing. Already a 5th hatchery is building. Getting the 5th base here would actually be... Yeah, this 4th rather of MaxPax is going to fall. If MaxPax can kill the base in the middle, that's not the end though for Serral, because he can just transfer drones down south. Yeah, the reason I bring that up, by the way, is because of obviously Serral tapping out quote-unquote early. Yeah, he could stick around for a little bit longer, but it's exhausting. Maybe it's a waste of calories. A waste of energy. Good dancing over here, though, by Serral so far. This is where that +1 melee is really nice. So when you can predict that your opponent is going to go for a Stalker opener, +1 melee for Zerglings is a big, big advantage. Because it's just really hard to push in here as a Protoss player. We have a 2nd attempt over here on a 4th Nexus. This time around, it's almost, I don't want to call it do or die, but it is becoming very critical. MaxPax's base is getting targeted down and it's going to fall. No cancel. That means 400 minerals down the drain. If this was played on a, I don't know, NA server, for example, and there was some ping, I would write it up to that, but I think MaxPax made a mistake. Pro Gamer is human? No. No, I doubt that. No. No, I don't think that's possible. Okay, so Serral has stabilized. We're going into Lurkers. We're going into Aspire again. Nothing out of the ordinary. MaxPax in the meantime. Stabilized, yes. But also not in a great position. Serral's got everything going for him here. We're not quite in a confident and comfortable is what I was trying to say at the same time. New word. New word of the day. Anyways, he's once more. It's a long series for me to cast as well, okay? Hit like, thank you. It's also a bit of a sketchy position here for Zerg, but I think he's about to be confident and comfortable. Not a lot of storms available. I think there's only one more left. Yeah, I think this was a bit of an overextension by MaxPax. There's again the Nidus network. There is a base down south that is taking a bit of a beating. Prism heading on over towards the main. The majority of the Protoss army is up on the high ground in a bit of a finicky position, but it's not in a terrible spot. Zerglings and Zealots are fighting inside of the main base. The rest of the Protoss army is engaged over here at the front. Where's the rest of the lurkers? We just have 2 remaining. The rest must have been killed. They do have the ranged upgrade. No, actually, there's 4 right now remaining. 2 more finishing up. Transfusion is going to be used. Another Zealot run by in the natural expansion. Another warp in inside of the main. MaxPax playing Protoss like he's a Zerg. Trying to overwhelm his opponent at every single side possible. Another one of the lurkers falls. Serral taps out. Ay, 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 ay. I don't remember the last time I've really casted a Zerg versus Protoss where Serral lost on mechanics. Serral has been almost like a bully in this matchup. He rarely loses, and he just wins off of being better. Yeah, you could make an argument that Zerg is maybe overpowered, yada yada yada, but he pretty much always macros and micros better than his opponents. He doesn't seem to get nervous, his strategies are absolute top tier. He doesn't really have any dips in energy, he just plays like an absolute god. And over the last half year, we've seen him lose in straight up games against, for example, Clem. Clem overpowering him and out-macroing and out-microing him. We may just have a very similar situation right now as well in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup, where MaxPax, yeah, he played better than Serral in a full best of 5. No cheese, no shenanigans. Incredibly well done right here by the Danish Protoss. He obtains the victory. 3-1.